Hello everyone. So here we are, art journaling in simple steps, and what better place to start than acrylic paint? It is something that almost everybody has, and it does so much. It adds color. So I've grabbed a few colors that I wanted to work with. I've got my signatures, and I've got a couple other the little books too. I've got some, this is parchment paper, but wax paper works as well too. If you want to put a little bit of wax paper in between your pages, then you won't get paint on places that you don't want paint. I am just going to go for it since I haven't done anything to these pages yet. All right, so the most simple thing to do, I like to get a little palette. It's just a plastic lid. I save all my plastic lids. I'm going to start with a paintbrush. It doesn't really matter what kind of paintbrush, thin, thick, big, small, whatever you have. I think I want to cover a bit of space, so I'm using a pretty large one, and it's dry. I do have some water over here to do things with if I need some water, which I probably will. It's acrylic paint. One thing you need to know is when you paint a surface, let's put a couple colors out here. Let's just see what we've got. When you put acrylic paint on a piece of paper, you don't want to close that page or have that page touching anything else. Let me put my other signatures over here. Because paint is like glue, and if I were just to close that up and let it dry, those pages will be glued together. You can't get them apart unless you want to rip them apart. So this is art journaling in simple steps. The concept of the whole thing is to learn how to art journal through a process. It's not about a finished page. Art journaling is not a finished page. Journaling is writing. Art journaling is expressing yourself through art. It's a verb. Journaling is a verb. So you want to do something. We're not looking for a finished page, something pretty. We are playing. We are enjoying ourselves. I'm going to add a little bit of white just for giggles. So when you're using acrylic paint, especially with, something, a paintbrush or whatever, you don't want that paint to dry on your items. Put it in water, get it cleaned up as soon as you're finished. Because you can ruin whatever it is that acrylic paint dries on. It's pretty much ruined at that point. So I could use a brush, and I should actually have a piece of wax paper so I don't get paint all over the place. I'll have a piece of wax paper underneath so I can paint with abandon and not worry about where the paint is going. I could cover the entire page with paint, but I kind of want something a little bit fancier. I want something different. I like random. And that's all. I mean, some people just love to paint paper. That's all they like to do. And that is perfectly wonderful. I am going to get another palette out here for the blues so I don't mix my paints. I like to use the same color family or paints that are close to each other on the color wheel. so that I don't make mud. I'm not going to go into color theory, but if I were to put orange with that purple, after a while it would all be brown. So I like to either use different shades of purple, different shades of blue, or blue and purple together. Then I don't have to worry about making an icky color. So I'm just going to take that paintbrush and just have some fun. It's just kind of relaxing just to put color to paper and not to worry about what it's going to look like in the end. It's just the process of applying paint, looking at the color. That's my journaling day for the day. That's it. So that is a paintbrush. You can do a whole lot with a paintbrush. Now, I like this. I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. I'm going to leave it open because if I close it, it will probably glue itself shut. So I am just going to put it to the side and let it dry naturally. That's why I have other signatures to do more stuff in. Let's use that paper. Another one that I like to do, I'm going to use this as a palette. It's a piece of parchment paper. I usually have a piece of plastic, like a Ziploc bag, or the plastic that comes in, like a magazine comes in the mail. It's just a sturdy piece of plastic. I like to put paint on that kind of thing. And I probably should be using that, but it's in there, so I can't get to it. I'm just going to put a little bit of that down. And I'm going to use a brayer. A brayer is another way to apply paint. I'm just going to roll some paint onto my brayer and apply it that way. It does dry pretty quickly this way, but I do like the way it looks. Let's add another color. Let's add white. And I'm just kind of smearing it around to get it on my brayer and then putting it on the page. Probably should have used a color. Let me use some of this color so we can see instead of the white. That was probably too much. And get it on the page. I like that too. I want a little bit of purple now. Acrylic paint is usually pretty opaque if you're using a regular color, and that means that you usually can't see what's underneath it very well. If you've got a nice layer of paint on your page, you're not going to be able to see all the stuff that's under it, which is sometimes what you want and sometimes what you don't want. You can add water to acrylic paint and you'll get a wash, but we'll do that later. So that's another nice little start to a background or something for this page. The concept that I have here, art journaling in simple steps, you're just doing a single process when you sit down to a bunch of different pages. You don't have an image in your head of what you're trying to make your page look like. It's going to be a surprise at the end. When I have a surprise, when I have accomplished a page that I like, and I wasn't expecting it to look like that, it's not quite as disappointing as finishing a page with an image that I had in my head and then looking at the page and not seeing that same image on the page. It's so disappointing when you're trying to do something and it's just not appearing the same way you see it. So this way, you don't have an end result in your head, and you can just play and enjoy the process of painting or stamping or whatever you're doing. You build up layers, you start adding some things, and then all of a sudden the page starts to become something that you want to look at again and again, and you know that it's finished. So that's what this whole thing is. Simple steps to layer up pages without expecting to make whatever it is in your head. It's random. It's a surprise. You don't really know what you're going to end up with. So another way to apply paint is with a credit card. This is a Borders card, which makes it quite old. You can add paint directly to, well, let me do this one. Let me just dip the card into the paint and scrape it on. It gives a nice cover of paint. I like that. Or you can, let me use a color, use some of this, put it directly on the page and scrape it so that it will dry just like that. I'm getting it everywhere. I am making a mess. I succeeded. I've got paint everywhere. And see, those pages were starting to stick together. These are wet pages. If they were to stick together and start drying, you'd have to rip them apart, holes and all kinds of stuff. So, I love a credit card. You can also use your fingers. I'm not going to do that. I get paint on my fingers and I can't get it off again. But finger painting is pretty fun. It is something enjoyable to do. I am going to use up some of this paint and just put it in here just because I have it poured out here and I don't want it to go to waste. So I'm just going to keep finding places to put it until I've used it all. I guess I've got enough paint here to cover the entire page. The entire page. And I will let that dry and then put something on top of that at another time. That's a whole page right there. Let me put that aside so it will dry. I do have this page. Let me get this stuff out of my way so I can see what I'm doing. And I've got some purple here that I would like to use up. So I need to put this in water so it's easier to clean up at the end. I think what I'm going to do, get my brush back out here and brush this paint on this page to use it up and just to enjoy painting. Let me put this wax paper over the edge here so I don't get paint everywhere. This is a composition book and the pages are pretty thin, so my pages are warping. So if you don't like that, you need to use paper that's just a little bit thicker, made to get wet and to take paint just a little bit. And I'm just going to use up all this paint. You can see my pages are warping, and that is okay, because we're just learning what happens when we apply paint to paper, and it doesn't really matter. It's just the process of putting color on the page. That's all we're worried about today. Putting color on the page. And that is it. So, using acrylic paint, just brush it on. Use a brayer, use your fingers, use a credit card, scrape some paint on, have some fun. Don't worry about what it's going to be. Let that dry. And come back and do something else to it, because it's kind of boring. I am going to leave you with that. And what I would do is just continue and add other colors to other places and just have some fun just putting color on some of your pages. Doesn't have to be all of them, just a few, just randomly. I guess I could have done a little bit of painting in here because I need some more paint or something in here. While I've got it open, I am just going to add a little bit of paint right there. Just a little bit. That was just a little bit. Maybe I should paint just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. So enjoy the process. Don't worry about what the end result's going to be. Just enjoy the process. Get used to paint. Be random. Have some fun. Don't worry. Don't stress. The journaling is just adding some color. And have fun. Just have some fun. So that's it for adding some paint. There's many other ways to use acrylic paint, and we will get into all of that later. Thanks for watching. Have some fun.